Over 130 residential schools operated in Canada. The first federal residential school began around 1883. The last closed in 1996. These schools, predominantly funded and operated by the Government of Canada and Roman Catholic, Anglican, Methodist, Presbyterian, and United Churches, were created to enforce the adoption of European traditions, languages, and lifestyles by First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children. To better understand the history of these schools and what it meant to Indigenous communities, we invited residential school attendees and their families to share their stories and experiences. For some, these stories are a moment of healing. For others, a chance to talk about the history and the system. All are important to preserve for future generations. My name is Ryan Funk, and with my co-host Lisa Muswagon, we followed these stories for We Stand Together.
My name is Lisa Muswagon. I'm a Nakota Cree member of the Pimicikamat Cree Nation. I grew up in Winnipeg as well as northern Manitoba, and I would like to take this moment to acknowledge where we are located right now. We are on the Treaty 1 territory, where the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Métis, the Saulteaux, they all live in this territory, and we'd also like to acknowledge our visitors on this territory, and we'd also like to welcome our guest for today, who is Geraldine Shingoose, and the community knows her as Gramma Shingoose, and we are so grateful to hear her story.
Good morning. It's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah. So my English name is Geraldine Shingoose. My spirit names are Sky Woman, Northern Lights Woman, and I come from the Bear Clan. And my warrior spirit is Grandmother Turtle. So, and my parents are, I want to acknowledge my family. My parents are Eva and Henry Shingoose. And we come from Treaty 4 territory. Tututna-Weshebing. I hope I said that right. Yes, I don't speak my language because of the residential school. So those are my parents, and I'll be talking about them later. And it's really important that we acknowledge our families. So I'm a mother of 3, and I have 8 grandchildren, and I have 5 great-grandchildren, so I'm a great-grandma. And I have my Bachelor of Social Work, and I'm retired now. And so I have so much to share today. I'm going to begin by letting you guys know that I'm a 9-year residential school survivor. I went from September to June, 10 months out of the year, and I didn't go home for the summer holiday, for the spring break or the Christmas break or anything like that. So I attended Muscowequan residential school, and it's based in Saskatchewan. And I don't know if you guys are aware, like some of our First Nations that lived in the western part of Manitoba, we were sent to residential schools in Saskatchewan, like Muscowequan and Gordon's residential school, and Fort Capel and Maryville, so. My sister Darlene attended for 10 years, and my brother George attended for 11 years. And my little sister Connie, she attended 1 year. So there's a big gap between me and my sister Connie. She's 6 years younger than I am. Yeah, so, where do I begin? I've shared my story many a times with the schools and the universities, and I usually share about life before residential school and life during residential school and life after. And today I think I'm just going to speak briefly about how it was before, because it's really important that people know that life before residential school was a very beautiful memory for me, because it was a time where I was with my parents and I was with my kukum and my siblings, and we were happy. Like, you know, we lived a happy life. We didn't have any electricity or running water or, like, you know, any of those things, because we lived out on the land, eh? Like, you know, it was, and I spoke my language. That's all I spoke, like, you know. I spoke Soto. I cry because that time was very, it's a beautiful memory for me. Like, you know, I carry it in my heart. I carry, I guess what came later was the federal government. And they took my family away from me. And that was the hardest part for me. When I went to Muscowequan, each time I left them, it'd be really hard. So whenever I went to the school, like, you know, I always carried that memory of them. I said that night when I'd go to sleep, I'd think about them, and then they would make me feel safe, like, you know, in my bed, in the dormitory there. So Muscowequan Residential School had the girls' side and the boys' side, but they had different parts of the school. Like, they had the cafeteria, and they had where you went to school, to class, and then you had the senior dormitory. That's where the girls, the senior, bigger girls would stay, and then we had the little dormitory. So I spent 6 years of my first, like, you know, in Muscowequan, in the little girls' dormitory. And that little dormitory is very traumatic on me. It's, the experience I had during those first 6 years was I lost my language. I was punished for speaking my language. We would have the dentist come in, and he would work on our teeth, and sometimes he wouldn't even freeze us, or, you know, we had this medical exam van come, and they would give us needles, or, like, you know, just do whatever they wanted to our little bodies. And it's we experience physical and emotional and mental abuse, and most of all spiritual abuse. And the spiritual abuse was taking away my language and taking away my natural time with my parents and my kukum, and they took that away from me, and they, you know, forced me to speak Latin, like, you know, in church. Like, you know, we had church, and it was run by the Catholic priests and the brothers and the nuns, and, like, you know, we were always praying. Like, when we got up in the morning, we'd pray and kneel by our beds, and then we'd go for breakfast, and then we'd pray. And after breakfast, we'd go to church and pray. And then we would have lunch and pray again. So our day was filled with a lot of praying and kneeling down. I remember going to confession, and we all lined up like in the hallway into the church, and we'd have to go talk with the father, the priest. So we go in a cubicle. I don't know if you're aware of confessions, but in a cubicle, the father is sitting in there, and the next one is where you go in. So I would go in, and I'd kneel down, and I would tell him, "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned." Eh? And we had to do that every day, And in my adult life, I come to know that I had to make up lies. I had to lie about my sins, that I made a sin, and then he would say, "I forgive you, my child," and he said, go and say the rosary, Our Father and the 10 Hail Marys and that. And so I'd go out in the chapel and kneel and say that, and then it was time we could go back to the dormitory. So we were in the classrooms were bad experience, because I would see other children being strapped or punished. I would be punished. The first few years were lots, because that's all I spoke, was my language, and that's all I knew. I didn't know any English, and then it was forced into me to learn English. I remember in my grade 3 class, we had a male teacher, and he was very, he was a white man, and he had a bald head, and he always wore brown suits, and he had a tie, and he would walk up and down the aisles where the kids where we were sitting, and he'd have his hand in here, and then randomly, he would take his hand out of his jacket, and he would backhand us in the head, and if we cried, he would hit us again. If he'd slap us or punch us, it was mostly in the head area. So that was my grade 3, and then I went home for summer, came back, and he ended up failing all of us in the same class, and we had to go in his class again. So I experienced hearing loss because of the hits and the blows and the punches to my head. That time in residential school is as a child, you want to be loved, you want to receive that love, as parents, you love your child. But when we were in school, we never received that love. All we received was hate, and they wanted to make us like them. And we were given messages, when we were stupid, we were savages, we were dirty Indians, we were all those names. So whenever you hear, if you hear that as a child growing up, for those 9 years, you come to believe those messages, When I came out of residential school, I was ashamed to be Indian, ashamed for being brown. I didn't want to be brown. I tried to act like I was white, because that's what they wanted, And My parents, I looked down on them. I was ashamed of them. I was ashamed of my siblings. Because that's what happened to me after all those 9 years in residential school. And then it was later in life that I come to learn that talking to other survivors, like, I met other survivors and they shared their stories and I was listening to them and I was, well, I experienced that. So I would share and I said, oh my God, like, other people experienced this. Not just me and my siblings and the other kids I went to school with. I didn't know there was other schools across Canada. When I found that out, I was thinking, oh, how could they do that? How could they hurt so many children? And I knew that I wasn't alone. I knew that there was others. And when I'm with survivors, I just really connect with them. We have that connection. Like, it's there. Like our experiences, our connection. And then later on, I didn't know how to be a parent. I had to learn how to be a parent. I had to learn on my own. I had to read books and, you watch Little House on the Prairie and, all those, like the mom and dad and, you try to be like them. But I came out of there, like, really hurt and ashamed. And I didn't know how to parent. And I noticed myself that I became angry at my children. Like, I would yell at them because that's how they would yell at me to do stuff in the school. And I caught myself. I had to stop doing that. They were little children. I couldn't do that to them, what was done to me. And then I had to unlearn. I had to unlearn what was taught to me. And that is really hard, hey? It's really hard to unlearn all what was shown to you. And, it was all those behaviors, those harmful, hurtful behaviors. But I come to connect with my family, my dad and my mom. My dad was a really important connection because he's the one that helped me come out of that hurt, hey, and that pain. And he connected me with ceremony and, he helped me connect with my identity of who I truly am as Anishinaabe. And I become proud as years progressed, and you know what, it wasn't until 2010 that I was really, really come to love myself. Hey? And it didn't come from my dad, but it came from the youth. Hey? You, Lisa, you, and there's so many inspirational youth out there, and you guys just really inspired me, and I come to see myself as a beautiful brown woman. Hey, and I just love myself today, and just really, really love myself, and I love my children, I love my family. I love my community and I love my nation. But most of all, I love the survivors because I I really connect with them. And I think that they need more gatherings for survivors where we can gather and we could share stories and laugh, and because we could really relate to one another. And those are the ones, the true ones that know my story, and we can share stories about how we played on a monkey bar and how we were on track and field to get out of the school, and like I joined band to get out of the school, so I played that trombone. Yeah, it was so. But I want to share, I guess, like, you know, how I came to share my story, and like in 2015 when the TRC came to a close, I seen Justice Murray Sinclair, and it was a very emotional day, like, you know, across Turtle Island, especially with us survivors, and we were, and they had gathered all the stories from across Canada, and like I did with the TRC, the survivors, we were given that opportunity to share that independent statements, individual statements. You know, so I remember sharing my individual story at the Forks here in Winnipeg, and we all gathered at the Forks. That was in 2010. And they booked a hotel there, and they had the room set up, something like this. And they had tobacco for us, and I just sat in front of that camera and we shared our stories. And it didn't matter how long. And it was the very first time I ever shared my story. In sharing my story, it brought out lots, like, it's really hard on us survivors to share our stories physically. Like, you know, after that I had a heart attack, like, you know, because I've been carrying that trauma all those years. And us survivors, we still feel that those physical pains from residential school. Like, you know, our backs are sore. Like I have one of the survivors, she limps. Like, you know, she has she limps because she was medically experimented on her leg, like here. They cut, and she showed me her scar. Other ones shared stories, and I'm sharing these stories because they tell me to share them, eh? The other one, she was left-handed, and she was forced. They tied her hand, like, you know, she couldn't use it, and she was forced to use her right hand. Or sometimes when she'd use her left hand, her fingers would, like, you know, they'd pull her finger back. So a lot of survivors, the secondary survivors, share that their parents never shared their story. And their parents had passed on, hey? So it's really important that those stories are protected and kept in a safe place and that. So, but one of the things that we participated in as survivors was the independent assessment process. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, yeah. So it's the individual assessment process when the survivors, the Government of Canada, along with the adjudicator, and I had my lawyer and my support, and we shared our story, like, you know, in a circle. But in that sharing the story, we were questioned. Like, you know, like when I shared my sexual abuse, they said, "Did you tell anybody?" And then I said I couldn't tell anybody. All I knew was Soto. They didn't understand Soto, or if we tried to tell them, they'd shoo us away, or we'd get a strap. It was, and those kind of questions were just really degrading. But in the TRC, with the individual statement and with the panel statement, I only touched on the tip of the iceberg, eh? So, but with the individual assessment process, we described in detail what happened to us in residential school. It took probably about 3 days to do my story. We had to meet. And they had to expedite it because I had a heart attack. So they came to my house and I shared my abuses. So with the individual assessment process, we shared our physical, emotional, psychological abuse and sexual abuse. And we were, after they heard everything, then they would meet, like the federal government and the adjudicator, and make a decision what we would be awarded. And based on the criterias. So I brought these today because, it's called My Records, My Choice. And survivors can go on a government website under My Record, My Choice, and they can request their story, and because the federal government's going to be destroying our documents, our stories. They were going to do it in 2022, but they extended it to September 2027. So if these stories, if they're not, and it's up to the survivor, hey, sometimes maybe they just want it gone. But myself, I wanted to get my story because I need Canada, I need the world to know what happened in residential school. They need to know our truth, what happened, in residential school. So I got this copy, and the National Truth and Reconciliation Center here in Winnipeg, or at the University of Manitoba, they get a copy of this too. So my family can go, when I go, they can. Yeah, so I just want to share that there's not too many survivors left. And it's really important that people get out and learn their stories, and a lot of resources out there. And with National Truth and Reconciliation Week coming up, it's been really overwhelming for me. We have a lot of organizations and schools and universities approaching us to come and share our story. But I asked them that they do it in a safe way, and take care of those stories, take care of the survivors. I posted some tips the other day, pay for their parking, have water, have food. We like berries, and then if they gift them tobacco and gift them an honorarium, and don't let them wait, give it on that day. And then just with National Truth and Reconciliation Week, September 26th to the 30th, you see it out there already, you have people closing their organizations for that day. You have Every Child Matters. You see orange across the city right now, and it brings me comfort seeing that. Like, you know, it's people are get out there to those events that are going to be happening. Hang an orange shirt on your window, like, you know, those kind of things. But most of all, we want to acknowledge, I guess, the little ones that never made it home from residential school. I want to talk about them because they need to be remembered. They're really important to me. I remember in the dormitory there'd be sometimes you'd wake up and, like, you know, the beds would be empty. And you wonder where that student went. And then, but you'd forget about it because the daily life in residential school was always go, 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 eh? And then come nighttime, you'd see that empty bed, and then I would think that they went home. Hey, they went home to their family, or they ran away, or like in my school, there's 35 burial sites around Muscowequan, and up on a hill they have the graveyard. In 1983, they found 19 unmarked graves up there. And we used to go up there, like when we were in school, they used to take us for walks, and we would go up to that graveyard, and it was really unkept. They didn't take care. It's like they disregarded the children. Right now we have probably thousands of children that aren't named. And I could have been one of them. Could have been one of this, even the students I went to school with. Like, we have communities doing radar searches right now and announcing the numbers that they're finding of unmarked graves. And when I hear those numbers, it really hits home for me as a survivor, because it reminds me of that history. It triggers, like, all those memories of my life in a residential school. So I just want to honor them, and I asked the people to honor them, as they were babies, little children, and they need names. They need names. When 215 came out, some of us survivors went to Kamloops, and we when offered our support to the community when the 215. But we stopped in Cowessess, and there was the leadership invited us, and oh, that's so hard. Like, you know, when you walk on those grounds, like, you know, you just really feel a heaviness. Like, you know, I feel a heaviness talking about it right now, and you know, walking through, there's 751. But we sang them songs, the survivors. We sang them songs, drum songs, offered tobacco and burnt smudge, and we had a sharing circle just to share, like, you know, what we experienced. It's important to have that. Today, by me sharing my story, I hope it brings voice to the injustices that happened to the survivors, and to the little ones that didn't make it home. I hope and I pray that that there's investigations that are done, because we need to name those children. But also we need to, as hard as it is, even today, sharing my story with you was very emotional, very hard. But it brings me comfort knowing that my story is going to carry on. Somebody's going to hear it out there. And I pray that they share my story, with others, people that don't know, A lot of people tell us to get over it, life goes on, but we can't, we live with it every day. Not just on National Truth and Reconciliation Day, we live with it every day. When I make my bed, I make my bed every day. That's one of the things that I picked up from residential school. I can't leave my bed undone. It has to be made. So we carry it every day. I just want to close with, I share this with you guys. And this is Gramma, this is me. And that's my little girl. And that's Muscowequan Residential School there. And the eagle. But Jackie Travers, she's the author of this book. She said, Gramma, what would you tell your little girl? And I told her I would tell my little girl, I love you. And that's what I'm telling her in this picture. And it's a coloring book. It just came out. And I did the foreword. I wrote the foreword for her. She offered me tobacco to do that. And then it shows the beauty of our culture and the beauty of our ceremonies and families. And this is the way we were, eh? Before residential school, and we're still like that. Our culture and we're going to take our future generation forward. So, and that's what this book is, our resilience. Gramma has resilience. So I just want to close with that. One more thing. I want to share that I've been invited to go to Stockholm, Sweden. And the people, the Indigenous people over there, the Sami people, they're going to be going through the same, what we went through with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So they're just starting that over there. So they want to hear from a survivor that experienced the TRC Commission. And so I'll be doing that. I'll be on a panel with the Justice Minister that was assigned to the Truth Commissioner. And I'll be sharing my story with the embassy staff too as well. And I've been sharing my story since the TRC came to a close for the last 7 years. I never thought I'd go international. So I'm going international as I leave October 5th, and I'm back on October the 8th. So, but I'm going to take what we experienced here, but I'm also going to provide really, recommendations and suggestions on how they can move forward in their Truth Commission. Because I went through it, so as a survivor. So they want to hear from a survivor. So that's all I have to share today.
Wow, I couldn't help myself but get emotional. Like as an intergenerational survivor, I can feel your story too, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you were here to share with us the truth, along with your resilience, and we're so excited for you, your trip, and everything that you're coming out with. You know, like you've come a long way. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming on our episode today.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Yes, thank you. This is We Stand Together. Hearing these stories may be difficult and it may make you angry, but they're important to hear so that we can work together, continue to move forward, because this isn't just in the past. Indigenous communities are still facing discrimination, racism, and challenges. Our hope is that by listening to these stories, we can come together and continue on this journey of reconciliation. Multicultural is located on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis.